Welcome to the Deep Dive Spirituality Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Brian Russell, and today I want to celebrate a couple of things. Today is the 200th episode of the Deep Dive Spirituality Conversations podcast. So I want to thank all of you who take time to listen, who've interacted, who've messaged me, subscribed, shared, liked, all those kind of things. And if you haven't done that and you really enjoy the show, would you please like it or subscribe, share it with friends? And also am excited because I want to celebrate with you a health update. I'll get to that in a minute. And also share a testimony to an unexpected healing of a deep soul wound. Another thing I'm celebrating right now is I'm recording this on September 10th, and it's literally the halfway point between two anniversaries that I'm celebrating. In August, my book, Astonished by the Word, if you're watching on video, you can see I can't point right. I'm looking at the camera, but Astonished by the Word had its second birthday right at the end of August. And my book, Centering Prayer, is about to have its fourth birthday. So I want to thank those of you who have read the books. And if you're interested, I have Amazon links in the show notes that can show you how to get to it on Amazon. In particular, Centering Prayer, my publisher, Parekattil, has it priced. The paper version, I think it's just a little over $12, and the Kindle is a little under $12. So it's priced really right. If you want to support the show, you can use those Amazon links to essentially go and buy anything that you normally buy. It'll obviously, if you click on Centering Prayer, it's going to take you to the book, but then go on and search for whatever. And Amazon, those are affiliate links, and I just get a very small kind of royalty back that doesn't affect your price at all, but allows you to support the show. And if you'd be so inclined and you have had the chance to already read one of these books, if you could go and leave a review, that would really help me. In particular, I'm interested in the Centering Prayer book. It's got, as of right now, 83 reviews on Amazon. And if we can get that number up to 100, I think it changes how the algorithm would look at my book, and it would make it more accessible and recommendations to other people. So without saying anything else, I want to get immediately into the show and again share a health update. You've probably noticed that I haven't been putting out as much content podcast-wise really most of this year, and that even stretches back in some ways back to 2024. If you subscribe on YouTube, you know I haven't had many videos most of the summer. And that's because I've been in essentially about 13 months, really 14 months now, of what I would have to describe as a health scare. Back in July of 2024, I always do my routine physicals. I'm just diligent about that. I'm committed to having a healthy body so that I can, I'm going to take care of this body temple. So I do go to the doctor at least once a year for physical and do the full blood work and all that kind of stuff. And last summer, July 2024, my PSA score doubled. And if those of you don't know what PSA is, that's a check of, I think it's a hormone that the prostate secretes. And for men, it's kind of the initial screening. It's kind of a check engine light, if you will, on prostate health. And elevated PSAs need to be checked out. Now, I have a family history of prostate cancer, so I've been watching my PSA very carefully ever since my own father was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Again, he was treated successfully and is alive and doing well, hasn't had any recurrences or anything. This is well over a decade ago now, but it's always been in the back of my mind. And so when I saw that my PSA score had doubled in 1 year, I immediately went into worst case scenario mode. Again, I always say I'm a professional worrier. I'm also really good at strategic thinking. But when it comes to my own personal health, that ability to kind of think big picture and focus doesn't work out so well. So I literally went into a panic mode. And the good news about on the prostate cancer front is it does. Well, the good news is, by the way, I don't have prostate cancer, so let me just get that out of the way. But it took a long time to actually get to that good news, because it's easier to prove a positive than it is to get enough evidence to say no, you're okay. And so I had to go to a series of urologists. That was in the midst of actually moving from Orlando to our new home south of Orlando, and I first was diagnosed with prostatitis, which was one possible explanation for the elevated PSA. And again, long story short, had the high PSA in July, went through some antibiotic treatments, took another test that actually blew out through the roof that said maybe you have a higher chance of having prostate cancer, which really, again, frightened me. That was right before Christmas. But my doctor wanted me to stick with antibiotics, and then in March, at the end of March of 2025, and so it's a long wait, about 7 months, I had an MRI, which showed that there were no lesions, there were nothing suspicious about my prostate, which meant most likely I did not have prostate cancer, and didn't need a biopsy. So that was wonderful news. But what I found out at the very end of at the end of March of 2025 is that my symptoms were caused by the fact that I have a really big prostate, really triple the size of a normal one, and that had been creating not only my elevated PSA ultimately, but it also had been creating urinary symptoms that, honestly, as I've looked back, I've had for a long time. And again, I don't want to give you the old TMI, too much information here, but let's just say I've just had a lot of urinary symptoms, which basically meant I was continuously going to the restroom and always having to know where is a bathroom at. And so for treatments for that, you have various options. Also, is having some basic general pelvic pain. And my own urologist, and I'm going to make some more episodes about prostate health in general, which those of you who listen to the podcast don't need to listen to that. But if you're a man, or if you have a man in your life, they may be helpful for you. But let's just say it's there's kind of not the greatest options for treating enlarged prostate. There's some drugs. Some of them work. Because mine was big, there's a certain class of drugs that can help shrink the prostate, but it comes at the cost of just really, I would say, nasty side effects. And I did try the medication, and it's just like, no, there's no way I was going to take that medication for the rest of my life. And so my urologist didn't want to treat some of this other symptom of pain that I have, so I got punted to another urologist who wouldn't even see me, but he recommended that I would go see Dr. Parekattil. And I called up Dr. Parekattil's office, and I was thinking, geez, and this guy was way far from my house, about an hour. And I called up, and they were able to see me pretty much right away. And what I found out is this dude's world class. People fly from all over the world to see this guy. He's the president of the Urological Association, and he's an expert on different robotic surgeries, and just does all this high tech stuff. He'd been an electrical engineer or something before he was a doctor. And so I go see this guy, and and I'm so grateful to God that that my insurance worked with him, and that I ultimately was kicked out of my was passed on by my own urologist, who was fine. But Dr. Parekattil, best doctor I've ever had, ever. His office was like going to Chick-fil-A. They treat you like a VIP. You call the office, they pick the phone up, you have a question, you don't have to leave a message. They answer your question when you call. They have a messaging service, and it's never taken them more than 20 or 30 minutes to get back to me. Fantastic service. And what I found out is Dr. Parekattil is an expert on a procedure known as aquablation, which essentially is a way to reduce the size of a prostate and open up a channel that basically just solves urinary symptoms. It's basically they go in and power wash your prostate, and then there's a little surgery involved too. They go and resect things and pull the tissue out. And so I did the pre-testing for that, and I was able to actually see my own insides with a little camera they do through a procedure called cystoscopy. And I could just see, wow, completely blocked. And also that my bladder was getting damaged. So I'm super grateful that I went and saw Dr. Parekattil. And well, the long story short, I had this aquablation surgery on in August, right? Towards the end of August. So as of today, I'm roughly 3 weeks post-op, doing super well. I'm in recovery. I have to take it easy for an entire month. I'm going to have some, again, TMI stuff, but I have some residual effects that just take a while for everything to heal up on the inside. But I'm doing fantastic, and I can already see that my quality of life, geez, it's already better. So I'm super grateful. But I'm even more grateful for what happened through the process of having this surgery. Now, if you're going to ask me what's the worst thing that's ever happened in my life, it's really easy. Some of you who've listened to me might think it was the divorce that I went through, but no. The worst thing that ever happened to me in my entire life happened in January of 1971. So this was 54 and a half years ago. I was 21 months old, so I'm just a little kid. But here's the scary thing, friends. I remember what happened to me when I was 21 months old. And it was a soul wound that I've carried for over 54 years that's really affected me. It was the worst thing that ever happened. I've had this memory just burned into my mind. I was born with a hernia. And so my parents did what, a lot of, and I've talked to other men that have had this too, had to go in and have a hernia surgery when I was just a little kid. I was 21 months old. And this isn't a bad memory from a surgery, but at some point when I was in the hospital, and I don't know if this memory comes from before the surgery or after the surgery, but burned into my mind was a scene of pure terror where I was trapped in a crib and holding onto the bars. There's like a net over top of the crib. I'm in the hospital. There's a net over the crib, so I'm stuck. And this female nurse, is yelling. And it scared me. It scared me so bad. I was terrified. And I could close my eyes, and at different points in my life, that memory just jumped up at me. And I cannot not tell you the little subtle ways that actually kind of seared into my nervous system. So it's always made me kind of a hyper vigilant person. It's a person when there's people yelling, my blood pressure just goes up, my heart rate goes, and that's cost me greatly in my life. Now I've learned to be brave, and I've learned to be strong, and many of you who know me personally would probably say that was true about me, but that was because of what happened when I was a little kid. Okay, now what that means is certain medical procedures. Again, I'm okay going to the doctor, just doctor's offices for the most part. I don't have problems with nurses for the most part. I mean, I've never had a problem with a nurse other than when I was 21 months old. But certain procedures, certain places where I know I'm not going to have any control, I panic and I'm really scared. So you can only imagine how scared I actually was about having this surgery. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't have even done it except I loved Dr. Parekattil. And not loved, it's not a past tense thing. I really liked Dr. Parekattil. I felt like his whole team was fantastic. So I had 100% confidence in my surgeon's ability. But the idea of anesthesia, not so much the drugs itself, because I've had a colonoscopy, and I was scared about that, by the way, too. But I wasn't worried about anesthesia, that something was going to happen to me. But I was really afraid of just being in a situation where I literally had to release control, because it was just bringing back all those images of me being trapped in the crib. So I want to give a shout out first to one of my good friends, Reverend George Finley from Miami. He's an Anglican priest. I was having a conversation with him, I think in early July, right when I had signed up for the surgery, and I told him I was afraid. And George, just being a great pastor, he prayed with me, but he read these Bible verses to me. Isaiah 43. But now, thus says the Lord. This is Isaiah 43, 1 through 3. He who created you, O Jacob, he who formed you, O Israel, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name, you are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned. The flame will not consume you. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. As soon as George read those verses, and again, have I ever read those? Of course, but they weren't in my mind. As soon as George read those, I immediately said, I'm going to memorize those verses, and I'm going to remember those when I get to the hospital, and I'm going to say them to myself when I'm in the operating room right before I go under. So I want to give a thanks to a great pastor for stepping in and giving me this resource. And again, all the way up to the surgery, every day I'm finding myself doing research, looking, thinking. And I kept thinking about poor little Brian in the crib and how scared he was. And, by the way, I've done some counseling around this and done some visualizations that didn't really help. I got to the point where I'm okay, I don't need to be upset with the nurse. Maybe she really wasn't yelling at me. And by the way, in case you're wondering, is it possible for somebody to have a memory like that? I'm going to say absolutely yes. I verified it. I'd never talked to my mom about this for some reason. And I said, Mom, when I was in the hospital, was I locked in a crib? And is it possible that some nurse was yelling? And she goes, yeah, Brian, that happened. I wanted to stay with you in the room, but they wouldn't let me, and I was arguing with the nurse. The nurse wasn't yelling at you, she was yelling at me. But I still have to say, little Bri didn't know the nurse was yelling at my mom. All I knew was I needed my mom. I didn't get her. I was terrified, and that nurse showed no compassion to me. So that's what was locked in. And so going up to the surgery, I started trying to think, okay, this is going to bother me. What can I do? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to actually metaphorically take little Bri from 21 months old to the hospital. And I'm going to carry him into the hospital in my mind. And I started picturing myself, and this may sound a little hokey, friends, but I want you to hang around to the very end of this, because I got to tell you that something profound happened to me. Again, I had the Bible verses. And then I started thinking, okay, what do I wish would have happened to little Bri? And it's like, you know what? I'm going to picture myself going into little Bri in the crib, and I'm going to give little Bri a hug. And then simultaneously, I have started imagining myself about ready to go to sleep in the operating room on the table. And I pictured little Bri giving me a hug. And I pictured myself saying, little Bri, I got you, when he was in the crib. And I pictured little baby Brian giving me a hug while I'm, strapped down on the OR table, and it's like, big Bri, got you. Of course, I was inviting the Lord to come in there, but I wanted this really strong visual about caring for my little self when nobody else was there for me, and also caring for my adult self and bringing those two things together. Okay, so long story short, here's the testimony. We go to the hospital. I'm ready. I have a sheet that I put made a little worksheet out, gave all my information, because I was also worried about my blood pressure going, because whenever I'm around these medical things, my blood pressure literally goes sky high. And I mean like bad. Like I've been in doctor's offices when my blood pressure's been like 180 over like 120, and they didn't even want me to leave. Like, you need to go to the hospital. I'm like, no, this is just white coat syndrome. So I had a sheet, and I had basically took my own blood pressure 2 weeks in a row every single day before I went to the hospital, so I could say, hey, I got this low baseline, which is completely normal. Of course, I put all my drugs and my prescription drugs that I had on there, because my doctor had made a few prescriptions before the surgery for my prostate. So I had all this information on the sheet. So I get to the hospital. My wife and I are there, and I got to tell you, the entire day at the hospital was a total blessing. Total blessing. Again, I haven't had surgery in 54 and a half years. So I get there, pull in. And we did this surgery at the Avant Health Hospital. There's several of them in Orlando. It was at the one closest to my urologist's office. And the surgical unit, again, this was a small regional hospital, so the surgical unit was on the second floor. So I went in and checked in at the first floor, and they told us to go upstairs. And the moment I walked up the steps to the actual surgical area, I knew that everything had been set up by the Lord to be a really great day. Because as I walked up to check in at the super nice registration area for surgery, what was on the wall right at the check-in? Isaiah 43:2. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. Isn't that amazing? Now, again, Advent Health in Orlando was created, and it's still owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So it is it's like a Christian hospital chain, but it's not Christian as though everybody works there as a Christian. But they do have Bible verses around, so it's not unusual. My wife's had surgeries there, and I've seen the Bible verses, but I found it utterly astonishing that the very verses, or one of the verses that George Finley had given me and that I'd memorized for that day, was right there. So that's how my day started. So I'm already giving thanks to the Lord for that. And I had visualized how things would go, and I was trying to oh geez, I don't want to be cause the nurses any trouble. I don't want to panic when I see a nurse. And I get called back by a nurse, and I was expecting in my visualizations, I was just thinking I was going to get a nurse maybe like when I was a little kid, not a mean one, but I was expecting maybe a female nurse, and I don't mean any gender stereotypes by that, but that was what was in my head. And instead, it's a male nurse comes out. His name ended up being John, which was awesome, and John called me back, and I thought, wow, okay, I got a male nurse, so I'm not even having a trigger from some past memory, because my memory had no men in it. So I get back in the room, you put on the robe, these hilarious yellow socks I had. I did complain to John that I didn't get an orange jumpsuit, and I said maybe I'm at the wrong place, and we had a little bit of a laugh. And then while we were getting checked in, I told John about what happened to me when I was a little kid. And he goes, you know what, that's really weird. He goes, when I was less than 2 years old, I had a terrible memory from when I was growing up. And I said, you do? I said, nobody ever believes me when I tell him. He goes, well, man, I believe you. That happened to me too. And I'm like, it wasn't the same thing, but here's what's the chances of my nurse having a memory from he was less than 2 years old. So again, I knew this was just going to be a great day. Anesthesiologist comes in, and it's a female anesthesiologist, which is awesome. I was really concerned what I wanted to happen, so that I needed to have full memories of being at the hospital. Now, I didn't want to be awake for the surgery, so don't hear that part. But what happens when you have surgery in a lot of places, and I knew they did this at Advent Health, is usually right before you go back to the operating room, you're given a benzodiazepine. It's usually known as Versed or midazolam. And they always say this is something to help you relax. But one of the side effects that not everybody knows is within about 90 seconds of having that injection, your ability to remember anything just disappears. So you're literally still awake. A lot of people think they get knocked out back in their pre-op area, but what it just is they don't remember anything. And so you basically don't remember a thing until you wake up in recovery after the surgery. And a lot of people appreciate that because surgery can be really scary. But for me and for little Bri, it was more scary to literally think that we wouldn't be able to remember something. And I wanted to remember everything because I wanted to re-experience a day at the hospital and in a way that I could see how the medical professionals really worked, because I wanted to leave with a good memory instead of a bad memory. But I wanted memories. And so I asked and I didn't know if the anesthesiologist was going to go along with this or not, because I think they all have to, but I didn't want to even argue because I was already a little bit nervous and my blood pressure was already up from, even though John was really nice to me. And I said it to the anesthesiologist, and she said the best thing. And she goes, we usually do give that, but I just want you to know, I don't like that drug either, and I don't get it when I have surgery. And I'm like, oh, good. And that just literally let me calm down. And again, having a great day. And then I said, oh, you're going to be in the OR with me. She goes, well, only if you need me. We use a CRNA. I have a nurse anesthesiologist who will be taking care of you, and her name is Jean. And you'll meet her in a little bit. And so Jean comes in, and I have to do the same thing because she was, already with the benzodiazepine to give it to me and stuff. But and I said, no, we're not going to do that. And she goes, okay, I do want to give you some pre-medicine, but it's not going to mess with your memory at all. I'm like, well, that's 100% fine. Now, and then this is the awesome thing. Okay, it's another female. This is a female nurse, but she's specially trained. She's the nurse anesthesiologist. Now listen to this. She doesn't know who I am. She doesn't know me from Adam. I'm just a dude. And she goes, I'm a Christian, and you don't be offended by this, but if you're open to it and interested, I'd love to pray with you before we go back. My wife's had several surgeries at Advent, and her anesthesiologist never offered to pray with her. But so this day, I'd literally get a person who's going to take care of me when I'm out that wants to pray with me. I was so happy. So she prayed. I didn't tell her I'm a pastor, all this other kind of stuff. I just let this lady pray for me, and I'm like, man, I am in such good hands. Thank you, Lord. And so it's time to do the surgery, and my blood pressure is going crazy just like I thought, but they were able to take care of that with blood pressure medicine, and so I get to go to the OR. And it was awesome. I remember everything. They had me pick a song out, so I had my favorite Bob Dylan music playing. I got to look around the OR and check out all the cool equipment because I wanted to see the stuff because my surgery was really cool, which again, that'll be in a different video. And I got to talk to the nurses. They had me scoot over from the bed I was in over to the table. Had me move around a little bit, lay down, get all ready to go. Jean's getting all the anesthesia equipment ready. She gives me an oxygen mask, and I know okay, I'm going to take some breaths, and then I'm going to be knocked out here pretty quick. And so what I did right before I went to sleep is I did exactly what I said I was going to do. I remembered that little Bri in the crib, and I gave him a hug and said, I got you, little Bri. And then I visualized my little baby self on me, saying, got you, big Bri. Jean says, I'm giving you the medicine to put you to sleep. And, they use the propofol. It's that white stuff they shoot in your veins. I don't remember watching the medicine go in, but I remember laying there. And I was totally relaxed. I wasn't scared at all, which praise God. And I ended up closing my eyes, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to open them up, and I'm going to look at the ceiling. And I remember just watching the ceiling, and then literally the last thing I remember is the ceiling just kind of melted. And the next thing I know, I'm jabbering away in the recovery area, and went home. And by the way, everything just went really well. So it's not fun after having a surgery for a couple days, but been doing better ever since. Now, and here's the healing. I talked about that soul wound. So that soul wound was me when I was a little kid. And you might think, well, geez, you got it healed just by having a great day at the hospital. And you know what? That's what I thought actually happened. I'm like, yeah, I just had a great day at the hospital. I don't ever have to be afraid anymore. It just went so well. But here's what was amazing. About five days after the surgery, I do centering prayer with my wife Astrid every single morning. And, I'd still been thinking about the surgery every day, and I really couldn't get out of my mind, because it was almost like, wow, that was so easy. Everything was so easy. But then I'm doing the centering prayer, and then I started thinking about myself in the crib. I thought the old memory was coming back again. But friends, it wasn't scared little Bri, terrified in the crib. The memory that popped in while I was in deep centering prayer was little Bri smiling in the crib, jumping up and down. And friends, I'm going to cry right now, but I literally had tears coming out of my eyes when I was seeing this in the centering prayer. And then I pictured myself coming in, and my little baby self said, "I'd always knew you'd come for me. I always knew you'd come, Big Bri." And I said to myself, "Mom, here, I love you." And he said, "I love you too." And then I said, "What are we going to do now, little Bri?" And he goes, "I'm going to give you all the energy back. And you know what we're going to do now?" And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "We're just going to walk the path." And those of you who've listened to my content know for a long time I've had this vision of, I say this to myself in the morning, today's the first day of the rest of your life. Trust, surrender, walk the path. But that day, that morning, something happened on the inside of me that bad memory is gone. And I feel free. And almost every day, this has been multiple weeks ago, I thought, maybe this was going to be some kind of short-lived thing, but it's not. And friends, I want to testify to what God can do, because this was the Lord that did this. And the amazing thing, this was 54 and a half years in the making. And so, number one, don't give up. I'm grateful that, I had the courage to just hold on and continue to do the deep work that I do with spiritual formation and opening myself up to God over and over again. I never thought that this was going to get healed. I just wanted to be okay at the hospital. But God did something to that day. So I want to give a shout out again. Reverend, my brother George Finley, thank you for Isaiah 43. I want to thank the Advent Health System for having fantastic professionals. I want to thank the anesthesiologist and also the CRNA, Gene, for, taking the risk and saying, "Hey, do you want me to pray for you?" I want to thank Dr. Parekattil for just being a fantastic human being and a brilliant doctor who has a 10 out of 10 bedside manner that put me at ease, and also his whole team. And again, I want to once again just say thank you to the God who loves me. And friends, I want you to know that God can do amazing things. I think we all know that, but I know it all over again, and I'm so grateful. And if I could be of any service to you, feel free to reach out. My contact information is in the show notes, Brian at brianrussellphd.com. If you know anybody that needs to hear this, that might be encouraged by it, please share it. Again, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe and if you'd like it. And friends, let us give thanks to the Lord together. Until next time, live by faith, be known by love, and be a voice of hope to others.